Hey there, career seekers. Welcome to Find Your Passion Career. I'm here to help you find a career you like, and dare I say, possibly even love. I'm your host, Amanda Nachman. I'm the founder and CEO of College Magazine. After working with thousands of college students, I've noticed that when it comes to career, there's a lot to demystify. Let's get started. You are qualified. My book, Qualified, helps you uncover your strengths and all the unique value you have to offer. Learn how to level up your story, make courageous connections, and speak with confidence to achieve your dream career. Get your copy and join the Qualified Challenge at amandanachman.com. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Find Your Passion Career podcast. Today, I have with me Dr. Aviva Legatt. She is the elite admissions expert and founder of Ivy Insight, the gold standard in college admissions consulting for undergraduate elite college applications. She's also the host of College Admissions Real Talk podcast. An in-demand leadership and college admissions speaker with a fresh perspective, Dr. Legatt has been hailed by the New York Times as a trustworthy expert on college admissions and recognized as an expert in corporate culture and diversity as a faculty member for Coursera and the University of Pennsylvania. And I have with me here her new book that's coming out, Get Real and Get In. Thanks for being on the podcast, Aviva.
Thank you so much for having me, Amanda. It's great to be here.
Yeah, well, so I really enjoyed the beginning of your book where you talk about your journey, going into college and also pursuing music business. That was your first vision. How has your career journey changed since that moment?
Yeah, so it's changed a good deal, but sort of came back to where it started. So I grew up in Princeton, New Jersey, where obviously the big Ivy League university by the same name is there. So I grew up in this, very educated community, but I did feel like a bit of an outsider there because, my family wasn't as affluent as a lot of the families there. They didn't throw as many resources at me. They just said, well, there are good schools here, we should move here, right? And they did what they could to give me the best opportunities. And so, I think that importance of education was instilled in me at a very early age. And ultimately that led me to my very transformative, but also very stressful college process, which is what inspired my career. So when I applied to college, I thought I was going to do music business. And for my career, I was really passionate about musical theater. And as you mentioned in your question, I loved the band Hanson back when I was a kid. And I went to a lot of their concerts and I got really fascinated with, the inner workings of concert production and just what goes into creating an artist or creating an image out there.
And if you're listening and you're not sure who Hanson is, it's the song Bop, the one that gets stuck in your head, the one that, I think I play on demand on a regular basis. I'm like, where did that come from? Like, it just plays, you can't help it in your head. I feel like it follows you.
It's funny. Yeah, it's a really cool song, but a lot of people got really sick of it when it came out because they did overplay it on the radio and then they sort of like stopped playing it completely. But in any case, I've always had a passion for the arts and that has continued even through today. And ultimately, I got to my dream school through my own stressing and difficulty. What stuck with me is not the fact that I got in, but the fact that I pushed myself and figured out a little bit more about what my goals were and what I wanted to pursue and who I was as I was going through this sort of pressureful, stressful situation where I was, mostly on my own applying. And I figured out what I wanted to do at the time. And then when I got to NYU, things changed. And I realized that there was this field called higher education and I could pursue that. And on my shoulder was this, I had this college admissions journey. Wouldn't that be great if I could help people with this process eventually? I knew though I couldn't just do that right out of college. I had to get some experience. So I went to Penn. I got my master's and doctorate in the field of higher ed, worked in admissions at the Wharton School and did freshman transfer, did a lot of academic initiatives. And ultimately, again, kept this admissions experience on my shoulder this whole time. And when I was about to finish my doctorate, I had sort of a fork in the road. I could have stayed, or I could have pursued this college admissions thought in my mind, and ultimately just decided to do that. Figured I had the safety net of graduating from the doctoral program if it didn't work out. So that's what I've been doing for the last 7 years, and really have enjoyed and appreciated the chance to work with so many young people and their families on this journey.
Well, what sparked this message, get real and get in? Like, for you to write this book, are people not getting real? Are they not showing up as their authentic selves?
That's a great question. I think that in a lot of cases, a lot of the students and families I meet with, and even college kids too, who are applying to jobs, it's like, there's all this like idea of you have to package yourself. And yes, you do have to present yourself in a cohesive way to an admissions committee or to a hiring committee. I'm not disputing that, but it's just a question of like the process that you're using to get to that goal. So you may arbitrarily think that you have to add on certain things to your resume or certain things to your activity list because so-and-so who got a job at McKinsey who did this. So you should do this to get a job at McKinsey. Similarly with the college process, like, oh, I know people who did community service, so I should make sure I have some hours. But you're not really thinking about like the meaning of that to you or why you're doing it beyond the fact that you're trying to replicate somebody else's journey to wherever that goal was, whether it's working at McKinsey or going to Harvard, right? So
the word I hear is should. Whenever you have that word in what you're about to do, like I should do this, really question that. Does it really come back to you? Is there a meaning for you into why you're doing this?
Exactly. And I mean, do you know enough to know that you would like to do this? So there's a lot of exploration that you can do within yourself and also within fields and within colleges before you even, put yourself out there for an opportunity. So you want to make sure that whatever opportunity you're vetting is the right fit for you and that you know why you're doing what you're doing. Because if you don't know, then you're going to mindlessly go through, checking off your goals, but you're not going to ultimately be satisfied. And it's not about like being happy all the time, but you have to know what you're doing and why you're doing it. Otherwise, you're just kind of living in this like mindless cycle.
In your book, you have a lot of these great exercises to help people pull out this authentic story. What are some tips that you might have for our listeners on how they can do the same, whether it's applying for a college or they're in an interview for a job?
Great. So I think just a general guidance on that, and there are some different questions in my book that you can refer to. I would say that asking the question versus jumping to the assumption or to the goal is always the good first step. So what I always ask people before they start working with me in a coaching capacity is like, how are you defining success? And then digging a little bit more into that. So oftentimes people define success as, oh, I have access to the best resources, or I have access to the best professors, or I have access to the best job. But why? Like, why is that important? And then you get in a little bit deeper there, and then you probe a level deeper. So I would suggest anybody who's looking to learn more about themselves, definitely ask yourself questions. And if you can't find the questions, have somebody else ask you the questions, and you can journal and you can write for yourself, or you can talk with somebody, whether it's a coach or a mentor or somebody in your community or somebody whose career you're aspiring to. Have them ask you the questions about yourself, because ultimately when you're presenting your case, whether it's for admissions or for a job, you are going to have to answer some of these reflective questions anyway. So you may as well know the answers for yourself first before you're put on the spot to perform. And maybe you're giving the answer that's not true or not exactly true, and then you don't feel good about the interview. I found that when I was out there interviewing for jobs, I always felt good about my interview if I felt like I could present myself the way that I am versus the way that I thought somebody wanted me to be based on what they were asking. So that's my number one piece of advice is ask yourself the questions. And if you can't find the questions, have somebody else ask you the questions that are most important to get at this.
Yeah, when we're just starting out, we think, oh, I need to practice these interview questions so that they sound just right for what the listener wants to hear versus I need to practice these questions for myself. So I have the answer. And so that I feel confident when I give that answer, because that answer reflects what I actually care about, why I'm actually here. I love that big question of how do you define success? And every listener, I hope that you take that away from what Aviva just said, because if you can ask yourself how you define success and you can really dig deep, you can get a better understanding of how to set your goals and how to go after them, because they align with what you define as your success. And everyone's definition is different. Okay, so tell me a little bit about if you've ever faced any career rejection, right? Because, as you tell your story, it sounds like so lovely and beautiful and so perfect, of course, looking back. But, I want to help listeners understand, it's not always this linear path. There are these moments of doubt and rejection, of feeling unqualified. And I think we've all experienced. Can you share maybe just one moment where you've ever felt that way?
Well, I think that the decision to go into my own business was a lot of that feeling like unqualified in general for or questioning the qualifications I had and their relevance to what I was doing. Right. So, my decision to go into business for myself was certainly passion driven, but also driven by the fact that, in a large organization, I'm not somebody who thrives in that environment as much, because I like things to move fast. I like to be creative. And I like to be collaborative. And when you work for a large organization, there are a lot of moving parts that are not in your sort of immediate purview or in your immediate influence. And so you kind of become a victim of circumstance. And so I found myself, even though I enjoyed and appreciated a lot of my positions that I had at Wharton and at Penn, I found myself feeling like a failure pretty often there, because I failed to conform and be able to sort of adapt to that larger bureaucratic environment. That wasn't, a great culture fit for me in terms of the day-to-day experience. And I certainly butted heads with people from time to time, because I am kind of like a creative driven person. And sometimes that's helpful, but sometimes it's not in certain situations. So so I would say it wasn't like maybe a tangible failure that you would point to, like I lost $100,000 on a deal, but it is like a recognition of like, okay, like I have this certain limitation based on how I show up and, how I want to show up. And so how do I maximize the strengths I have versus how do I fit into something that doesn't feel right to me?
Yeah. I think that's great that you recognize that. And then you took that risk of starting your own business. How did you push past that to start the business? If you felt, hey, I don't know if I'm qualified, I don't know if this is for me.
Well, I think in terms of the business aspects, I don't know why I have a certain bravery about that. I think it was more like feeling like unqualified for being in a large organization than having my own business. I think I just felt like very deeply motivated to do this kind of work to help people with college. So I didn't think about the risk as much. I mean, I probably should have thought about it more, honestly. But
the battle is not being afraid. It's like almost, if you don't think about it, it's almost better being naive enough to not realize the risk.
Yeah, as I said, I had kind of the doctorate, like I was like, I'm going to finish this. And if it doesn't work, I felt like that was a safety net enough to say I could go back on the job market and just say, oh, I took time off to finish up my dissertation. But, the reality is that, I probably didn't really intend to go back. I just was like, all right, this is at least my story I'm telling myself so that I can experiment. And then obviously, and people have all different choices about romantic relationships, but having a partner who is like very supportive of my choices has been really meaningful. And I think that if you want to have a partner, then you have to look for somebody who can support your choices, whatever they might be, versus somebody who might criticize you, or somebody who would say, oh, hey, this isn't such a good idea. So my partner's always been very, supportive of me, and all the different twists and turns that I've taken in my career. So that really helps a lot.
Yeah. The college admissions scandal felt like this wake-up call for parents and for college applicants to get real. Like, I can't think of a more timely time for your book. What was your reaction to that scandal?
So interestingly, kind of a couple ways I felt a couple ways about it. One was like maybe something that is surprising, which is like I had some empathy for the parents who participated in this scandal because I am a parent and I just know like being a parent is a harrowing experience and people do crazy stuff for their kids. I mean, not me necessarily, but I understand that like parent instinct of like, I need to help my kid. I need to do whatever I can. Obviously that instinct went very wrong here, but
Well, the worst part is when they didn't even tell the kids, like they knew that if the kids knew, it would break the kid's heart. And like knowing that, I'm like, wow, they're aware that they can't even.
Yeah. I want to be clear, not a decision I would make, but an instinct that I empathize with. So I was like, oh my gosh, like these people are so successful. Like what would make them think that they would have to do this to help their kids? Like, it's just like that desperation. Like, I guess I just felt really bad for them at first. I was like, oh my gosh, it's just crazy. And then again, it's like in the admissions world, you do see a lot of people trying to play different games, whether it's like something more, mild, like we're talking about, where you're trying to kind of package things in a way that, isn't authentic, which, is kind of a very mild scandal in and of itself. Right. And then, the sort of extreme end, which is what this is. So I think it was like very much derived from this fervor that is out there about the college admissions process. So again, it was like mostly disappointment and sadness for the parents and families in general, that people do feel they have to resort to all these things. And I'm hoping that my message resonates kind of beyond the book itself, because I do think that if we're showing up the way that we are, then the right opportunities will appear, versus, if we're just trying to like put all our chess pieces in play and check all the boxes, then we may not end up in the right place. And for these parents, it was prison, right? So again, it was mostly like disappointment, sadness for everybody sort of facing the challenges of this college admissions process. And then also like, a bit of SMH around like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe they did that. But, I don't know what they were under, what kind of pressure they were under, but it just seems very, very out of order, of course.
Tell me about the object you brought and how it reflects your passion.
Well, I had a couple things in mind to bring, but I mean, I'm glad you held up my copy of my book, Everyone and Get In, because you kind of stole mine, because I really feel like this book is a culmination of a lot of my passion, the passion I have for, I was able to talk about the things that I love growing up, whether it's like theater or, like Hanson when I grew up, my love for education and leadership. So I feel like the book really encompasses a lot of my passions, which is one of the reasons I'm really excited to share it. But if I had to bring another object, it would probably be my playbill theater mask, because like obviously masking in COVID is not fun, but I have this really cool mask that has a bunch of playbills on it from Broadway. And so like, that's my way to jazz it up. And then occasionally I would meet somebody who'd be like, I like your mask. And then I'm like, I know they're a theater person, and that makes me happy. So that was probably the other thing I would have brought, but I'm very happy that we're not having the mask as often as we have been before.
Yeah. What career advice do you have for college students today?
I would say continue that deep dive into yourself and make sure that your choices are authentically yours, and make sure to connect with people in the fields before you submit your applications. Don't just submit on the website where 1,000 other people are sending their applications. Meet people at the company, like take them out for virtual coffee, even if it's just like a 10-minute chat. That can give you a lot of insight about an organization. Number one, if the person is even willing to chat with you, and then number two, what they actually say on the chat. And so use that as great practice for yourself. I think that's the best way to find your fit at a company, or to see if more entrepreneurial career is right for you.
Yeah, definitely. It's all about learning from people who have been there before, who are in the place where you think you want to be, and they have been in your shoes. So understanding the path that they took to get there. And then, like Aviva said, getting that practice in, the practice of telling your story. I hope that everyone listening today thinks about how they define success. Thanks for being on the podcast, Aviva.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts and stay in touch. Book me to speak at your next event or send your career questions to Amanda at findyourpassioncareer.com.